ויגור אברהם בארץ פלישתים ימים רבים. He has trees, he has an altar, and he has peace. And here comes chapter 22 and says, he thought that his life is peaceful. He thought that his aliyah has terminated in Beersheba. Oh no, he doesn't know that the highest test is still in store for him, and the worst is to come. And this is our story. So I believe that we can say that אחר הדברים האלה means after all what happened in chapter 21. Now the second half of verse 1 is ואלוהים ניסה את אברהם, and God tested Abraham. What does this mean? This we call in English or in literature dramatic irony. Dramatic irony means that the narrator informs the reader a piece of information which is unknown to the hero. Behind the back of the hero, the Torah tells us this is a test. So for many years I believed that the story is so awesome and so terrifying that the readers need some kind of to calm them down, how would you say, to reassure them and say it's only a test, don't take it too seriously. But finally I realized that the word only is not written here. It doesn't say it's only a test. If I come to a friend and ask for 20,000 shekel, and he takes out his checkbook, and they say, oh, don't bother. I was only testing your friendship. This is one story where you have the word only. But I can come to my friend and say, please lend me 20,000 shekels, and he takes out his checkbook and he writes, and then I say, I'm so happy not only for the money, I'm happy that our friendship has stood the test. That's how you say in English? Mm-hmm. Which means this is a real test, not a fake test. And most tests of life are real and not artificial tests. So you cannot say that this verse calms us down and says, reassures us and says, this is only a test. So now we are in a true difficulty. What do these words mean? Because they are probably very important. Dear reader, don't be afraid. God does not want the flesh of children. It's not that God is hungry. It's God that wants the faithfulness of his believers. This is what the story is about. It is a test. It is a true test. But it is not a test that, as you could have mistakenly think, that God is like Moloch. Right? That God wants child sacrifice. So it mitigates to a certain extent our terror reading this story. And now the story starts and we don't know whether it's night or day. We don't know whether Abraham is looking at the stars or sleeping. We know only that God calls out Abraham and he says, Hineni, which is in English, here I am. And it's quite a difficult word. As you know, here I am is the word of presentness. When I was learning in elementary school in Yerushalayim centuries ago, in a different century, they would say Uri, and I would say Hineni. This was. Today they say We don't have time for Hineni. But we would say Hineni, which means here I am. It's a word of presentness. But in the Bible, almost always, the word of presentness means preparedness, which means I'm fully with you, which I never meant when I said I didn't know that I'm supposed to, but what hineni means, and if I would have known, I would look for another word. So why is it so? You have to learn a small piece of biblical psychology to understand why preparedness is expressed by presentness. Because in biblical psychology, whether something happened or not is decided more internally than externally. For instance, next week somebody will ask you, have you been at Pardes last week? So you said, for sure, they even took a picture of me. This is Western thinking. If they have a picture, it means a proof that you have been here. In biblical thinking, it doesn't mean anything. Maybe you have dreamt. Maybe you have slept. Maybe you have thought about other things. Were you really there? Could you say hineni? Which means I am truly with you. Sometime on the phone we asked, are you with me? The biblical answer is, for sure I am fully with you. I am with you. Hineni. So if God asks Adam and Chava, where are you? It's not a question about the location. It's a question of why don't you face me? Why can't you say hineni? Why do you evade me? When Jonah escapes God, it does not mean that he thinks that you can flee from God. It means that he turns his back on God, that he disconnects himself with God. He cannot say hineni because he doesn't want to go to Nineveh. So this is very, very important in biblical in psychology and in biblical literary expression. That Abraham starts the story by not saying yes. He says, whatever you demand of me, I am prepared to do. Poor man, he didn't know the continuation of the story. But it starts with hineni, the strongest word in this connection of a test. Let's continue. Verse 2, ויאמר, קח נא את בנך, את יחידך, אשר אהבת, את יצחק, ולך לך אל ארץ המוריה, והעלהו שם לעולה, על אחד ההרים, אשר אומר אליהם. And he said, and God said, take pray is now, please, right? Take pray your son, your only one, whom you love, Yitzchak, and go forth to the land of Moriah, and offer him up as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I shall say to you. So God says to him, please, take your son, your only son, your beloved one, Yitzchak, and make a burnt offering of him in an indefinite location, somewhere in Har Moriah, the place which I'll show you. Ask yourself, why do we need these three adjectives before the word Yitzchak? God could have said, take Yitzchak. So whoever knows Rashi knows one of the most beautiful midrashim, but I don't want to repeat it because I am searching for the pshat. What does God say? Or let me give you an example from everyday life. If I come with a request to a friend, I can upgrade my request and say, I come to you and ask something very big. Or I can downgrade, you say? And the request and say, I want something very small. Now, believe you can think what is nicer and what is more polite. It's easier to say, I want something very easy. I know for you 20,000 shekels is nothing, so I want something very small. God says, I know exactly what I demand. Your son, your only son. After the expulsion of Ishmael, he is his only son. You see the relevance of chapter 21 in this word, only son. Your son, your only son, your beloved son. So it's not, you don't have to tell me that he is your only son. I know exactly that he is your only son. In Ilan, I teach a whole year the Akedat Yitzchak, and what I do today, in one evening I do something in 4 sessions, and then we learn the Akedah in medieval poetry, in Israeli modern secular poetry, and finally in art. So Israeli secular poetry, you can say that the biblical themes, it is the strongest one. In other words, there are more secular Israeli poems about the Akedah than about any other biblical theme. Because the theme of sacrificing children for the sake of the security of our nation, of our land, is a very crucial and central theme. And it's natural that people will choose the Akedah as a mode of expression and say what Abraham was demanded, we are demanded sevenfold, because with Abraham it was not a real sacrifice, with us it is a full-fledged sacrifice. There are among these poems which are strengthening the person who lost his child. There are others which express a protest. As you know, many poems and pieces of art are expressing protest. And they say, who gave the parents the right to sacrifice their children? Why don't they go themselves? What kind of sacrifices? Is this a legitimate? I would put it very harshly. These parents were too much Zionist and they were more Zionist than parents. They loved the country more than their children. So, we don't learn these poems now. What is important is to take the question of these poems and place it in the midst of our learning. Is Abraham will come out of this story as a wonderful servant of the Lord. But will he come out as a good father? This is a legitimate question. Does the Torah place this question and answer it? So I'm pleased to see that God says, Asher Ahavta, the Son, the only one whom you really love. This is highly important if you ask this question, right? It's not that Abraham is an old man about 100 who is indifferent about children. No. He really loves Yitzchak, which makes the story more human and stronger, right? But surely this is not the answer to our big question. It will hover in this room till we finally understood. So God says to him, now something got lost in the English. Totally lost. And the author tries very hard to be faithful to the text. In Hebrew it says, Lech lecha el eretz ha-Moriah. So in English it says, and go forth to the land of Moriah. But you don't hear the words Lech lecha. Now the words Lech lecha appear in the whole Bible. I don't speak about the Torah. I speak the whole 24 books. Only twice. In chapter 12 and in chapter 22. Which means that they appear when God says to Abraham, you go forth from Haran, from wherever you live, to the land of Canaan. And it repeats the same words. Lech lecha. So it was Martin Buber who, in the 20s of the 20th century in Germany, was almost the forerunner of literary study of a biblical narrative. I can't explain to you why he did it. It was an answer to German biblical studies.